Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day two. Shana, thank you for your kind introduction. I realize that it's been a year and a half of knowing you, Shana, but only 5 hours of knowing you in person. And both have been a joy. So I know, folks, that I'm still flying high from yesterday's sessions. And the palpable energy of being together in person to celebrate our collective work over the past 5 years. We began yesterday with an inspiring opening speech from Lisa Eisen, founding advisory board chair of SRE. As always, Lisa was spot on, reminding us of the creation of SRE in the wake of the 2017 Me Too movement, her commitment to stop being fed up and instead choosing to stand up. Her decision to bring together a coalition of the willing, including Jewish leaders who had been doing and funding this work in different organizations and spaces, all with one clear goal: to build this very network that we are now all a part of, to fight sexual harassment, discrimination, and gender inequity, and to create safe, respectful, and equitable Jewish workplaces and communal spaces. We heard from Ilana Wien, our remarkable executive director. Ilana, it has been a privilege to be on this journey with you over the past 4 years. Together with you, your staff, my colleague advisory board members, our grantee partners, and experts in the field, we continue to learn how to navigate our response and accountability in the face of frequently multi-layered, nuanced, and deeply painful cases where women are harmed in our community. And we sat fireside with Ilana and Jodi Kantor, co-author of She Said, and among the most influential journalists currently reporting on sexual harassment and gender-based discrimination. The conversation was, for me at least, riveting and gave us deep insight into how Jodi builds people's confidence in telling the truth, her commitment to ethical, investigative journalism as a public service. I love that. And her belief that power is at the root of every case of sexual harassment and sexual violence. We learned a lot from their engaging dialogue. 2 specific observations I imagine we'll put to good use today. First, stakes are high for Jewish organizations working to combat gender-based harassment and discrimination. And second, even as the SRE network, joined by so many of you in this room, has made it possible to begin this work as a community, we still have far to travel. But as Shifra Bronsnick reminded us last night, we can do it. This group of people, we can build a more inclusive, a more diverse, a more just, a more equitable Jewish community. Before I take us through the agenda for today, I want to say how deeply grateful I am for having been a part of the SRE community from its inception. Lisa, although Jodi said yesterday that nobody picks up their phone anymore, which is terrible for journalists, I'm so pleased that I picked up the phone when you called 5 years ago. I've learned so much from so many of you in this room, and I'm proud of the deep alignment of our collective work with my own organization's enduring commitment to supporting grassroots feminist movements in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. They too are creating enabling environments where women, adolescent girls, men and boys are developing skills to prevent and respond to gender-based violence and abuse. SRE is the antidote to discrimination and abuse in our workplaces, our communal spaces, and among our professional and social networks. It gives me enormous pride to be a part of it. And now, to today's agenda. We begin by looking back at the SRE network's history to ground ourselves in the people and ideas that first chartered this organization. We will then learn from some of our fellow members and grantees who will share some bright spots in their work. Before lunch, we'll engage in a special session with first-hand accounts of victim survivors. Breakout sessions, which follow lunch, allow each of us to customize our learning based on our own needs and those of the institutions and constituents we represent. And you'll hear more this afternoon from our final speakers, Jocelyn Fry and Fatima Gross-Graves. And now it gives me the great greatest of pleasures to introduce Rabbi Danya Rutenberg, who will ground us, yahoo, in some words of Torah. Rabbi Rutenberg is the scholar in residence at the National Council of Jewish Women and the author of, amongst other things, On Repentance and Repair, Repair and Amends in an Unapologetic World. Danya, over to you.
Oh, good, there's a little step up for the short Jews. So, hi. It is such an honor to be here, and it is so thrilling to see all of the incredible work happening here and to behold all that SRE has become. I had the very, very great honor to be in the room when it happened, so to speak, to be part of the very, very initial meetings that became part of the meetings that eventually turned into SRE, thanks to the visionary leadership of Lisa Eisen, of course. Yes. It was such a powerful time, as those of us who were here last night and those of us who were there remember. The convening began in January of 2018. It was just months after Me Too broke big. We knew there were major problems in the community, and we knew that we could collectively do better, right? And we believed in our collective power to find our way. And we have begun to find our way. Begun. More organizations have better policies. They're doing better at taking responsibility for when harm happens. They're naming things that once would have been shoved under the rug. But it's hard work. Theory is always easier. At the time, getting out of Egypt probably seemed like really hard work to the Israelites too. Really hard, right? Scary to leave behind everything they'd ever known and to set out into the unknown. But it's also exhilarating, exciting, new. And then we get to, well, this week's Parsha. Famously, we get to the part where, after a while in the desert, the Israelites get a little bit weepy and say, "Who shall give us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate in Egypt for nothing, the cucumbers and the melons, right? The leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our gullet is dried away. There's nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes." Like, now it's go time. Our community is in that liminal midbar, that desert place, right? We're no longer as enslaved to old patriarchal ways of thinking but that new, thriving, just society has not yet been fully set up, right? It's manna every day. And the Israelites discover that the real work of freeing themselves is, well, sometimes kind of tedious and boring. And it's not where they want to be. So last fall, as Robert mentions, I published this book on repentance and repair, which is about applying Maimonides' principles of tshuva, of repentance and accountability, not only to our personal lives, but also to the public square, to institutions, and on the national level. And because of the work, including with SRE, that led me to write the book in the first place, and as a result of the book, I've gotten way too many glimpses, some of which were a little non-consensual, of the inner workings of many of our institutions, as have many, many people in this room. I know that many of you know many things that are happening in our community, whether or not you want to. And I don't think it's a great secret that many of our institutions and the people who run them are secretly or not so secretly longing for cucumbers and melons, right? Not the abuse, mind you, but the Israelites weren't remembering slavery. But I think there are people who are romanticizing how easy it was just to sit back and let this old toxic systems do their thing. Because this work is hard. Yeah, it's really hard. if you commit to addressing harm and abuse, what exactly does that put you on the hook for? What do you have to take responsibility for, and to whom? What does that mean you owe? What liability does that open you up to? What might that do to your personal or institutional reputation? How do we know when repair work has happened? Who decides? The answer, obviously, is always, always victim survivors, who must always be our North Star, right? And if you commit to equity, oh lordy, like what does that mean about how you deal with salaries now and with your current employees? You know, and how does that stress an already stressed budget? How do you navigate on an HR policy level the fact that both abortion and gender-affirming care are workplace equity issues in a country that has placed some bodies under attack? Thank you very much. It can feel tempting to long for the days when you could just do your work, right? Eat your leeks and melons in peace. Not in this mead bar, this great fraught expanse where you don't know what's gonna happen next, where everything feels so high stakes. The days are sweltering, the nights are freezing, and it's just not clear what would happen if you actually sent out that press release taking full responsibility for harm. There's so much uncertainty. But we know the price of those melons are way too high, because Egypt is a place of oppression, of domination, of enslavement. It wasn't better. Moshe, in this story, has a little bit of a breakdown at this moment, right? He goes to God and he kind of whines. Did I myself conceive this entire people, or did I by myself give birth to them? That you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries a suckling child. The implication is that Moshe isn't the Israelites' biomom. God is. It's kind of a poignant moment for us to be seeing feminine metaphors for God showing up, right? I think a lot of us in this room at times feel like Moshe, right? Trying to move our organizations and our institutions along, listening to them whine and kvetch and resist and try to pull their way back into these oppressive systems. And we probably sometimes feel that same exasperation and maybe even extreme burnout that we see from Moshe in this moment. God tells Moshe, in response, to gather 70 elders. And parallel to this whole story of giving the whiniest of the Israelites a little taste of their own medicine, there's this strange vignette in which God's spirit, God's ruach, comes down upon Moshe and these elders. But it doesn't seem to serve any narrative purpose. Right? The whole story of the quail and the Israelites craving meat could completely go and do its thing without this vignette entirely. So that we don't need this divine flex. What's going on? I think it's this. We can't do this work alone, ever. Not without other people, and not without the spiritual sustenance necessary to keep us whole and full while it's so hard. Right? We need to draw not down from ourselves until our batteries are at zero, but to pull from something bigger that can help us through. We need allies, and we need a practice. We cannot do this alone. So right now, take a look around the room. These are your elders. See all of the people in the room who have your back, who are committed to creating a more whole, a more just world. Even if the process is complex, even if it's full of agonizing choices, even if it's messy and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to disappoint people and we're going to have to iterate and we're going to have to figure out how to navigate this entirely new environment, this entirely new terrain, right? A vast expanse of professional and sometimes personal terrors that we must cross in order to get to the promised land where everyone in our community and our institutions are safe, are whole, and everyone can thrive in all of the ways. These are the people to call when you're stuck, when you need a lift, when you need support or insight as you work to make change inside and outside of your institutions. But you also need to find that ruach. Close your eyes for a second. Just take a moment to breathe in and out. Connect to God, the big bigness, the universe, our whole gorgeous interconnectedness, the whole beautiful pulsing stream of life, your own breath. Find it. Find ruach. I believe in us as a community. I believe in our capacity to decide to make the choice every single day to put care for each other above power, above complacency, and above looking the other way. I believe in us as leaders to help show everybody how to get there. If we can do that, we can cut all those years of wandering down, maybe. If we can do that, we'll find our way home. Thank you.
Danya, thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Thank you.